It's a nation that's enjoyed West Africa's strongest growth the past decade. But old rivalries subsist, and in Ivory Coast, a country that was racked with civil war before a French and UN-led intervention that first brought Alassane Ouattara to power in 2011, they're getting set to vote Saturday in a presidential election. Now 83, Ouattara seeking a fourth term. His two main rivals, predecessor Laurent Gbagbo and former corporate boss Tidjane Thiam, barred from running. With us from the economic capital, Abidjan, Justice Baidu, our correspondent, and from London, Alex Vines, Africa Director of the European Council on Foreign Relations. Let me begin with you, Justice. What's the mood where you are a few hours before campaigning closes?
There is quiet tension in many streets across Abidjan. Today is the last day of campaigning, and it is a one-sided event all across the city. I haven't come across any activities by any of the four other candidates that are running in this election on Saturday, on buses, on motorbicycles, on all parts of the street is people who are adorned in the shirts of President Alassane Ouattara in his party colors that are waving flags, tooting horns, and blowing their trumpet to what most certainly looks like a cruise to a landslide victory this Saturday.
Alex Vines, your thoughts on the fact that Ouattara is running for a fourth term and that Laurent Gbagbo and Tidjane Thiam are not in the race?
And for the United Nations 20 years ago, I remember the war there very well. I mean, Laurent Gbagbo was obviously president in that period, and his wife Simone, who's now divorced from him and is running as a candidate in this election, was the first lady. So, look, the elections are not going through a level playing field. It's all tilted in favor of the 83-year-old Ouattara, who will get a fourth term, I think is right to say. And then the big question is, will there be stability? Will there be prosperity in Cote d'Ivoire after that? This is a very ill-tempered election, and there has been a lot of fake news and disinformation circulating around. It's been quite an ugly election, even though its outcome seemed pretty clear-cut, given that everything is tilted in favor of Ouattara.
Yeah, that disinformation has been a talking point. France 24's team picked up on that. We're going to show you a clip from a longer report. It's read by Tom Canetti.
Journalists at independent media Ivoire Check meet for their editorial meeting. They're looking for disinformation circulating on social media, which they can debunk.
I was monitoring last night and came across two stories on the same page. Faso Star News.
Times residence was ransacked. That's the most urgent one.
Why?
Because the attack on President Gbagbo's residence is actually old news. This year we've seen the same story pop up 3 or 4 times.
Mohammed conducts a reverse image search to verify the information. It turns out not to be the residence of Ivorian opposition leader Tidjane Thiam, but that of a Hamas leader in Doha, bombed by Israel a few days earlier. Like most of the disinformation that Mohammed tracks, the propaganda comes from a website claiming to be affiliated with the Alliance of Sahel States, an intergovernmental organisation that brings together the juntas from Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso.
We're seeing the spread of fake news targeting Ivory Coast, which is being disseminated by pro-AES accounts. The posts are coordinated. When one page shares fake news, the others relay it.
A concern reiterated by the National Agency for Information Systems Security. Here, the agency tracks one of the most viral pieces of fake news this year in the country, the death of President Alassane Ouattara. an online rumour launched by opposition supporters in March.
Où est passé le chef de l'État ivoirien, Alassane Ouattara?
The rumour was amplified by cyber activists from neighbouring Burkina Faso, who created a fake screenshot attributed to France 24. It was an attempt to destabilise public opinion and to undermine Ivorian society, according to Ivorian authorities.
Now, Alex Vines, Ivory Coast, no stranger to disinformation, false claims that Ouattara is not even Ivorian, that we've heard for decades because he's from the north of the country. What makes this different at this particular moment?
Well, it's very divisive. I mean, this is a pattern that we see across elections in West Africa. We saw it in Nigeria, we saw it in Senegal, we saw it in Ghana, now we're seeing it Cote d'Ivoire. And so you have disinformation. You do see some of the disinformation is launched particularly out of the Sahelian states, and in particular Burkina Faso. My own organization yesterday published a paper called The Bear and the Bot Farm, which focuses on this and looks at why this is happening. Clearly, there was Russian training in this, but what we're beginning to see now is that the Burkinabes who have been trained in these techniques are now following their own agency and obviously targeting Cote d'Ivoire because the relationship between the junta in Ouagadougou and President Ouattara is incredibly poor. I mean, it's non-existent. So this is definitely about poor relations between neighbors that is playing out at this very moment in time.
Yeah, you have Justice Baidu, those three nations, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, which have broken with France, gotten closer to Russia, and it's become an issue in Ivory Coast in the north of the country. There are refugees spilling over from jihadist attacks across the border, particularly from Burkina Faso.
It's a key issue in this election. Only weeks ago, we were reporting on stories of people who are actually moving out of Ivory Coast into countries like Ghana, a lot of them for their own safety, according to interviews that I did with them. Many of them are unsure about what would happen beyond Saturday. 4 persons have now been confirmed dead in the weeks leading up to this election, including a soldier who all of them have been killed in protests that have sparked in several parts of the country, mainly to the south and to the west, which are dominated by opposition political parties. 2 of them, the key ones, have had their leaders disqualified from standing in this election, and they have called on their supporters to come on the street to register their anger and disapproval of the processes leading up to this election. Only 2 days ago, more than 30 of these protesters were sentenced to 3 years in prison. It brings the number to around 60 of protesters who have so far been jailed for 3 years for taking part in some of these demonstrations. We understand that these court hearings of about 700 people who have so far been rounded up all across the country and are going through a standing trial for taking part in what the government describes as illegal demonstrations and disruptions to public order are being tried for these reasons. And so there is a lot of apprehension in several parts of the country, particularly to the south, where the opposition party enjoys majority of its support at the moment.
And there's always this sort of dichotomy when you're in Ivory Coast because next to all of the uncertainty that you described, Justice, there's Abidjan, which is an economic powerhouse. They keep building a new infrastructure there, and it's a country that since the Civil War has gone from strength to strength.
Yes, that is the irony about this country. It has seen so much strife, so much bloodshed, and yet continues to boom in many aspects of its economy. It's one of the things on which President Alassane Ouattara is priding himself with, and it's one of the things that many of the people who support him stand on to say that he deserves another term. Indeed, when he declared to stand for this controversial fourth term, he did say that he had taken this decision only because Ivory Coast faces several economic and security challenges that require experienced hands like himself to be able to administer. I was here 2 years ago when this country hosted the African Cup of Nations, which they won. And I saw, having come back 2 years later, the massive change that has happened, at least in Abidjan, the first capital. Many flyovers, roads that have been expanded, skyscrapers that are springing up by the day, especially in Plateau, which is Plateau area, which is its central business district. It's obvious that this country is doing really well, and with the soaring prices of cocoa on the world market, this country, which is the largest world producer, is definitely flying on the back of those successes. And so on that front, yes, it is doing well. But then the activities that have happened with people being removed from the standing in this election, up to a third of people who are qualified to vote in this election decided not to register on the ballot at all. So for a country of about 31 million people, it's only about 8 million that are on the electoral roll. There are several persons in the southern cities like Abidjan and in San Pedro and parts of the west who would say that they are not interested in these elections at all. Many people feel that what is happening is definitely a slap in the face of democracy.
Alex Vine, how does a country like Ivory Coast overcome this paradox of huge potential but an unresolved past and present?
So, I mean, compared with 20 years ago, and there, Abidjan was a developed city compared with its neighbors. I mean, it's just amazing what has happened. And so the issue that Cote d'Ivoire is facing is very significant inequality and division. So the poverty of the north compared with Abidjan, the foreign direct investment is going into the south. Yes, some of the cocoa growers definitely are benefiting from high cocoa prices. And international markets are interested in Cote d'Ivoire. It's one of the countries that people are bullish, and they have written in a fourth-term election return for President Ouattara. That's written into the assessments this year that I've seen. And so more investment will flow into Cote d'Ivoire. It is seen as a stable country. And financiers have been saying that Ouattara will bring stability and consistency into a rough neighborhood. So, but like your correspondent has said, I do very much worry about the exclusion of many Ivorians from this electoral process. I don't think anyone could say that Thiam, for example, is not an experienced chief executive who could run a country. He's run big multinationals. Laurent Gbagbo, of course, is a different sort of experience that he brought from when he was president. So it's about now, I think, how does an Ouattara administration, if it gets a landslide, use that mandate to kind of continue prosperity, iron out inequality, and actually be more inclusive, because Ouattara is 83. He cannot continue to rule forever. And there will need to be a moment where political leadership in Cote d'Ivoire changes.
Alex Vine, so many thanks for joining us from London. Justice Baidu following it all for us from Abidjan in Ivory Coast.